German experts warn of links between the Polisario and Sahelian and Saharan terrorism. The situation in the Tindouf camps, in addition to its intrinsic complexity on a humanitarian level, is troubled by the worrying intentions of the Polisario front. Added to the already complicated situation in the camps is the desire to recruit new recruits for terrorist purposes, which German experts reveal in a report published by the media ARD. They designate the camps in the Algerian region of Tindouf as a target for radical groups from the Sahel and the Maghreb to spread their ideas and recruit new members for their organizations. The information published by the German media directly designates one of the strongmen of the Polisario front, Ismail Ahmed, linked to ISIS in Africa and an important collaborator in the recruitment of new members through internet forums. Ismail is not unknown to the Spanish justice system. At the end of May, the National Court of Madrid sentenced him to 2 years in prison, in addition to 5 years of probation, for radicalization, among other charges. Recently, he has been seen in propaganda videos in which he sent messages such as, "My path is the Quran, which is my sword, it is the same path that I have traveled in the past. And it is the same path that I have traveled in the past." Terrorist groups active in the Sahel and Sahara regions carry out significant recruiting work in areas such as Tindouf due to the instability and poverty that surround them. It is a fertile ground for radical groups to spread their ideas there, which does not mean that it is the ultimate goal, far from it. Indeed, the German newspaper points the finger at the West, which, according to observers, remains the main target of all these groups. These groups are not only focused on controlling areas in the region, but they are all part of this overall strategy, which means that attacks on the West are a priority. Hans-Jakob Schindler, director of the international non-profit organization Counter-Extremism Project, warns against this very thing and also highlights the danger of such recruitment attempts in Europe as well. It is still possible to exploit people in Europe from conflict regions, to radicalize them and possibly motivate them to commit attacks. This is a job that some, like Ahmed, intend to do in Europe, which he did through a German phone number that he used to hide his identity. This practice is more common in Europe, as communication in the Sahel is limited to Facebook messaging. This is the network that terrorists most often use to flood the networks with their extremist ideas and recruit new members. As the organization of the former intelligence services explains to BR24, communication there is very limited. This means that they only use their Facebook accounts to connect with each other. Then they switch to the messaging service Telegram or other means of communication. This creates one of the most worrying situations for the German intelligence services, namely the connection between the various terrorist groups. Whether it is Boko Haram in Nigeria, Al-Shabaab in Somalia, or the ISIS factions operating in the Sahara and the Sahel, all are in contact and know each other's movements. As Hans-Jakob Schindler points out, the goal is clear: where governments are weak, where there are economic difficulties, where there are inequalities, there is of course recruiting potential for terrorist groups. Many factors create a context conducive to the development of terrorist activity in regions as difficult as Tindouf, where the presence of the Polisario makes the situation even more complicated, if that is possible. What must not be forgotten, according to psychologist Ahmed Mansour, who is in frequent contact with refugees from Tindouf, is that instability and poverty are not the only elements that cause this type of crossing. It is also influenced by the way of understanding Islam that is practiced there, which always leads individuals to become radicalized, in reference to what the Polisario front tries to impose. All this weaves a network as complex as it is dangerous, whose first victims are in the Tindouf camps, where extremism is increasingly spreading among its members. José María Martín Reuters.